Joseph, and I'm here to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein. Warner Brothers Pictures is releasing it May 16th, 2025. I'm not familiar with these directors' previous films. However, I know maybe like 2 years ago, Nick and I watched the previous five films all within the span of 3 days. I don't remember much except the premise for each film is the same, which is that a group of people realize they're being stalked by death and they try to find a way to beat it. So, what is this film about? Plagued by a recurring violent nightmare, a college student returns home to find the one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. My pull quote: the domino style death sequences should satisfy gorehounds, but the overly long connective tissue plays like a boring family drama. This film is nearly 2 hours. It does not need to be that long. But what did I like about it? The kill sequences are inventive. There's quite a bit of humor built in. I do like a couple of the performances. Specifically, Tony Todd is in the film in what I think might be his last theatrical appearance. I also really liked Richard Harmon. He's featured in the trailer as the guy in the tattoo parlor. I think the best way to tell the story is to go through the death sequences. The film opens in the late 1960s, and we see a couple headed to the Skyview Tower. And the young lady, her name is Iris, she seems a little apprehensive. She's kind of getting a bad feeling, but they go up there anyway. And a sequence of events causes the tower to crumble and everyone dies, including Iris. And Iris is the last person to die. She's impaled by some rod. As Iris is killed, we all of a sudden cut to modern day and we see a young lady in her college classroom screaming. So clearly, what we just witnessed was a nightmare. And that college student, her name is Stefani, and she's played by Kaitlyn Santa Juana. So right after that, we see her in the middle of the night wake up in her dorm room screaming, waking up her roommate. And the roommate's like, "What's going on?" "Well, I've been having this recurring nightmare. I think it's really weird because the lady in it, her name is Iris. That was my grandmother's name." Okay. So the roommate says, "Well, I think you need to go home and figure out what's going on with your grandma because we understand that the grandmother's still alive. Because if you don't, I'm going to kill you." So Stephanie goes home and asks her dad, "Tell me about grandma," which I think is interesting that this young lady's never thought to ask about her grandmother before. And the dad says, "We don't talk about her." So Iris goes to her uncle's house. It's important to know Stephanie's mom left like 10 years prior. She abandoned the family. So Stephanie goes to her uncle's house, and the uncle says, "We don't talk about your grandmother. She's trash. She abandoned us. So leave it at that." But the uncle's wife tells Stephanie, "I shouldn't do this, but if you want to know about your grandmother, go look in that drawer over there." So Stephanie finds Iris's address and goes to her house. And Iris lives in this like Mad Max style fortress that looks insane. And when she gets there, Iris basically explains that the nightmares you're having are based in reality. When I was a young lady with your grandfather, we went to the Skyview Tower and I had a premonition, which is exactly what your nightmare is, but I stopped it from happening. I saved everyone. So, because of that, because I cheated death, now death is attacking everyone who should have died that night and all of their children because they shouldn't have been born. And the only reason Iris hasn't died and her descendants have lived is because for the past 30 years or whatever, she's locked herself in this fortress. So, of course, Stephanie thinks her grandmother's crazy. But before Stephanie leaves, the grandmother says, "Here, take this book." The book explains everything, and the book looks like the musings of a crazy person. But as Stephanie takes the book, the grandmother says, "Seeing is believing," which of course reminded me of Jessica Alba in The Eye. But the grandmother's death comes, which we can see was illustrated in this book of hers, where like a fire hydrant hits a rod and jams it through the grandmother's head. So we cut to the grandmother's funeral. We then go to a barbecue, and Stephanie's mother, whose name is Darlene, she had shown up for Iris's funeral and was invited to this barbecue afterwards. So she shows up, everyone's having a good time at this barbecue, and then a series of events occur that lead to the uncle being killed. His head is run over by a lawnmower, which was very sinister to me. After the barbecue, we get a really crazy scene because we had seen that Stephanie has spent time going through Iris's book, her death book, and she's created this wall trying to lay out everything. So we get a scene where Stephanie explains to her entire family that you're all going to die, and this is how it's going to happen. These people are going to go first based on their age, and so we need to figure something out. And of course, everyone's very upset. We then cut to the scene in the tattoo parlor that we all saw in the trailer, and that features Erik, Stephanie's cousin, played by Richard Harmon. The gag with that scene is that he does not die. Why doesn't he die? Because we find out that he's not the biological son to this family. The mother had this child out of wedlock. Next in line is his sister Julia, and we get a scene where she's tossed into a dump truck and smashed to death. So now everyone believes what Stephanie was telling them, and we end up with Stephanie, her brother Charlie, their mom Darlene, going to try to find out how to break this curse. Because within the book, the grandmother had wrote something about go find JB. He knew someone who was able to cheat death. The person next in line to die is Bobby, the brother of Erik and Julia. So of course he's freaking out and he says, well, I want to go. So they all take a road trip in Darlene's Winnebago and they get to this hospital and they meet JB. And JB is played by Tony Todd. And he basically explains that the only way to cheat death is to kill someone else or kill yourself. And of course they're like, well, why would I kill myself? Well, there was a person who died but then was resuscitated and they were able to cheat. So that's when they come up with the plan that Erik wants Bobby to die and then be resuscitated. And we had learned that Bobby has a peanut allergy. So Erik's plan is to give his brother peanuts. He has an allergic reaction that kills him, but because they're in a hospital, he can be resuscitated immediately. So they try that, but they do it in an MRI room and they inadvertently turn on the MRI to like max magnetic charge, which actually ends up killing both Bobby and Erik. So we're now left with Stephanie, her brother, and their mother, and they decide that they need to go to grandma's house. The mother, Darlene, is saying that she's willing to volunteer to lock herself in Iris's house because they believe that must be a safe space since Iris was able to live there for decades. So they get there and immediately Darlene is killed. The house explodes and it kills her. And then Darlene gets stuck in the Winnebago in like a body of water and drowns. So effectively dies, but then her brother resuscitates her. So we think all's well that ends well. So we flash forward a bit and see Charlie, the little brother, is at his prom when all of a sudden Stephanie starts having like a weird premonition. And then the young lady who Charlie's going to prom with, her dad is a physician. He's telling Stephanie, your brother's a hero. And Stephanie says, yeah, he saved my life. I was dead. And the doctor's like, well, dead? I mean, not really. If he was able to resuscitate you, then that means that your heart hadn't stopped yet. So that's when we realize, oh my gosh, she didn't actually die. So the curse was not broken. And then all of a sudden we see a train go off the tracks and kill both Charlie and Stephanie. The end. Yeah, I do think the kill sequences are fun, but the little, 5 to 10 minute chunks connecting them do feel a little tedious. I'm just going to go through my notes. I hate to say it, but I didn't love Kaitlyn Santa Juana's performance. She felt stiff and screechy. I also thought when we've realized that she is in college. She seemed to be a little older than what I thought she should be. And then when we meet her brother, I thought she looked like she could be his mom. So there's that. When we get to the grandmother's house, it looked like the opposite of safe. I feel like if death didn't kill her, the house would. There were like sharp spikes everywhere. It looked insane. And then the way the grandmother is living, I thought to myself, I would actually rather die than spend 40, 50 years living like this. I also thought it was funny when we see the book because it's just the musings of an insane person. I don't know how Stephanie was able to make sense of it. It's just a bunch of scribbles of like everything, any and everything. Any object you can think of is just scribbled into this book. And a couple of times Stephanie references the book in the hospital, saying like, oh, well, there are a million ways to die in a hospital. I just I thought that that plot point of this book, which from what I recall, I felt the same way in the other films, that whomever sort of figures out the pattern of death, it all feels real slapshot and ridiculous. I also didn't love the cinematography, especially after I saw the budget was 50 million. It felt a little cheap to me. One thing I found interesting is in the opening, we see a bratty little kid take some coins from the fountain in front of the Skyview Tower. And then we see him throwing like coins over the tower, and a security officer saying, don't do that, it could kill someone. We then see when Iris is explaining to Stephanie what really happened at Skyview Tower, we see that Iris took a penny from that boy. And then we see that that penny is taped inside of the book. We then see that at the hospital, Stephanie drops that penny and an old lady picks it up. So at the very end, when Charlie is going to prom, we see the old lady also in the same neighborhood, and she drops the penny trying to pay for like some lemonade, and that penny gets stuck in the railroad tracks, which causes the train that kills Stephanie and Charlie to run off the track. So then I thought, is that the origin of like this death thing, is the penny? Which made me think this should have been called Final Destination Pennies from Hell. At the end, we see that this film is in memory of Tony Todd, which was lovely. Like I said in the beginning, I think for people who enjoy the Final Destination films for the premise and the sort of elaborate death sequences, I think they will appreciate this film. So I would give Final Destination Bloodlines 2.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.